Hello, good morning to you and many thanks for joining us. It's Galaxy today, coming to you from Galaxy Television. I trust you had yourself a wonderful weekend and you're braced up for the new week ahead. My name is Justin Atadoni.
And he's joined by Uche Onyekumji. Like you rightly said, we do hope you had a splendid weekend. And we did say that today, mid-Monday, the 30th of April, we'll get serious. And today we'll be looking at Buhari's survival when it comes to impeachment and, of course, what the Senate has to say about all this.
Yeah, some senators called for the impeachment of the president over the purchase of the $496 million Super Tucano fighter jet. Just the previous day before that, it also happened at the House of Representatives where there was a rowdy session. But let's just bring you up to speed as to how it laid out on Thursday at the Upper Legislative Chamber. We'll come talk some more. Stay with us.
Thank you, sir, Mr. President.
The President, with your permission, I wish to move that the Senate do refer the request of Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, on the inclusion of the USD $496,374,470 million, equivalent of $151,394,494,335 naira only, in the year 2018 appropriation bill for the purchase of Super Tucano aircraft from the U.S. government to the appropriate committee for further legislative action.
Mr. President, as a consequence, the only thing that we can draw from on this is that we call on you, Mr. President, to invoke Section 143 of this Constitution. Because what it means is that this matter is not to be investigated. It is clear that this offense has been committed by Mr. President. If it has been committed, do we now say the violation of the Constitution is what we have to take for the shortcoming of the executive or Mr. President? Or we don't believe we want to run our country like a banana republic where expenditures and the role that the National Assembly is supposed to perform is taken away and expenditures can be incurred by the executive without recourse to the National Assembly?
So in my own way, I believe that the monies that are spent for security is worth it. But we should be calling for the refund of that money and for due process to be followed for us to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. We have seen so much bloodshed, and there's a need for us not to circumvent the Constitution, not to circumvent the laws of the land, in an attempt to achieve some certain ends. So in my own way, I do not think we should impeach the president, but we should demand that the money be returned to follow due process to the end. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, have come up to own up it that this matter is actually, the money has actually been spent. So of course, what it means is that my motion was proper. At least I've been vindicated. So now that there's an infraction, what do we do next? We have no other reason, we have no other thing to do than to follow the Constitution, which my colleague has quoted, Section 143 of the Constitution. That's what we should look at, and then be able to know what next to do. Mr. President, that's my own submission. Thank you.
Mr. President, a time has arisen when this Senate has to rise up and do the job which the Constitution stipulated that we have to do. If we have a chief executive who doesn't want to behave according to the Constitution, we follow the Constitution also to handle such a chief executive. And there's no way to, there's no other name to call this except that this is an impeachable offense. It's an impeachable offense, and we cannot allow that. We cannot stay here and Nigerians will be, the assembly will be taken for granted. Nigerians will be taken for granted. It should not be so, Mr. President. If you say that you are a man here, you can stand up to be counted. If you say that you are here on behalf of your people, this is time to stand up and get counted.
I think this is a PDP. Let me finish, sir. This is a PDP conspiracy, Mr. President. And I would like PDP to come out today to tell us which of their governors have taken the money released on Access Cruise account to the states. We are taking to state assemblies for approval. Now, again, it's a big challenge. Bring it now. You are telling us you are trying to bring accountability to this country, but you are not doing it.
My advice is that we have a committee on judiciary, legal, and legal matters. Issues of this nature can be referred to that committee. Let them look at it properly and advise the Senate on way forward on this matter. Let us not try to put this as if it is a partisan issue.
Between September and February, with all due respect, there were ample time for the executive to have carried us along on this issue. So there are arguments for and against, and I think that these arguments are valid. I don't want us to break it down to partisan issues or partisan issues. These are not partisan issues. The suggestion of the leader that let us send it to judiciary to advise one whether truly, from those who are not laymen, whether the Constitution has been breached. Two, the circumstances surrounding that, whether it does in any way justify that. They will advise us, and then it will come before us. And as you say, an action, then what do we do going forward?
All right, welcome back from that timeout. You just had arguments for and against the president's call, the call for the president's impeachment on Thursday at the Senate. You just watched senators there talking about the issues and how it is a breach of the nation's constitution. And right now they are thinking of, evoking the appropriate section of the Constitution, section 143, precisely to look at all of that matter. We have a guest here in Lagos, but I'm getting signals that we will just go straight to Ibadan first before we start up here in Lagos. We're being joined by Femi Aborishade. He is a legal practitioner. Many thanks for joining us on Galaxy today. Now, Barrister Aborishade, looking at all the matters right now and the call for President Muhammadu Buhari's impeachment, do you think it is a harsh decision on the part of the Senate, or they're just actually following a due process? Hello, did you get the question, Barrister? Okay, let me just repeat the question. I just asked right now, the call for the president's impeachment, is it in order? The senator is actually threatening to evoke section 143 of the nation's constitution. Are they in order, or is it just a harsh decision, or they're just trying to be partisan?
I think that the National Assembly is taking the decision to either invite or impeach Mr. President too late. Too late. On the basis of Section 80, Sub 2 of the Constitution, the President has no right, he has no power to spend money from the public fund which is not appropriated. Doing so amounts to treating not only the National Assembly with disdain, it amounts to treating the Nigerian people with disdain. It amounts to arbitrariness. It is a breach of the rule of law, because we are not under military dictatorship where the ruler has the freedom to rule according to his whims and caprices. In any society of about 180 million people, for the president to think that he could act disregarding the clear express provisions of the Constitution is very, very provocative. Our democracy is based on a written constitution. So I think the National Assembly is in fact acting too late. Under Section 143 of the Constitution, once the president violates the provisions of the Constitution, the National Assembly can begin the process to remove Mr. President. And in natural fact, Section 143 provides that it is whatever the National Assembly regards in its opinion to be gross violation of the Constitution. In this case, it is not a subjective opinion. It is an objective an objective assessment that Mr. President twice now has violated the clear provisions of Section 80, sub 2 of the Constitution. The first time was when he took $1 billion from the excess crude account, and the second time is the $496 million paid without the authorization or appropriation by the National Assembly. So they are in order. And when we look at it, from the point of view of insecurity in this country, it is a luxury for Mr. President to remain in power. As far as Section 42B of the Constitution is concerned, the primary purpose of government is the security and welfare of the people. We are experiencing in this country today an unprecedented state of insecurity. And Mr. President has proved absolutely incapable to guarantee our security in this country. Mr. President deserves to be removed.
Barrister, are you saying that the only penalty for this action is impeachment from the eye of the law? Are you saying the only way to deal with this issue is by impeaching the president? I'll take it again. I'm saying that. Are you saying that the only way to deal with the president's action is by impeachment? There are no other ways. Are you saying from the eye of the law, a case like this can only be dealt with by impeaching the president? Is that what you're saying, sir?
That is precisely what I'm saying, because we are governed by the provisions of the Constitution. We are governed by the provisions of the Constitution. And to ensure that our Constitution is respected, is observed, as the rulers swore to uphold the Constitution, the kind of violation which has been done twice now, as I've said before, deserves that the National Assembly should invoke the provisions of Section 143. There is no other way. That is the only way that will ensure that we are governed not by the whims and caprices of an individual, but by the provisions of the written Constitution. Be you so high, the law is higher than anyone. Mr. President is not above the law. And Section 43, invoking Section 43 is the way to bring him under the law and to check future violations by him or by any other president for that matter.
Barrister Femi Aborishe there, a legal practitioner who joined us from Ibadan in Oyo State. We're still looking at the purchase of Tucano jets and the call for the president's impeachment. Here in Lagos, we have two gentlemen joining us to discuss the matter with us.
Yes, we have Ladepa Johnson, also a lawyer, and then we have Emeka Maldonado, a publisher, Metro Star Media Services. Good morning and welcome to Galaxy today.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
I'll start with you, based on what your Leonard colleague has said concerning the impeachment of the president. Although, reading reports, the Edo State Senator said something like they were not calling for impeachment. They only said that Section 143 should be put into action. But your Leonard now is saying that the only way to deal with this issue, more like the only way to, when you commit an offense, the only way you can be punished is by being impeached. Is that what the law says? Do you think is right?
Well, if it is found to be a gross violation of the Constitution,
okay,
then really I don't know what other way you want to do it. You may suggest...
I'm not a lawyer.
Exactly. You may suggest other ways to deal with the president. But basically, he was calling for Section 143 to be invoked. Now, it is such a cumbersome process that I make bold to say if I were a betting man, I'd bet that Mr. President would never be impeached. Not between, you understand? And I'm sure maybe we'll go into the process later. But basically, politically, it is good because as Mr. Borishade said, this is the second time. The first time was $1 billion US. This is $496 million. And they had till from September till February, so he could have informed the National Assembly. And things, you know, you get into habits very quickly before you know it. So whilst it probably isn't feasible that he be impeached, especially if you look at the division of the House, party-wise, it is good and necessary that the matter is harped upon so that the executive will check itself later and, I mean, in future and bring itself under due process of the Constitution.
All right, now, Emeka, let's look at the division that was in the House on Thursday. Some senators actually agreed with the fact that Section 143 should be invoked and he should be impeached. Others are saying that, specifically Shehu Sani, that he should refund the money and not be impeached. How do you really relate with all of this?
Yeah, for me, it's unfortunate that the government that ruled to power on the mantra of change has now joined the same part, to the same part of criminality by maintaining slush funds. We're talking of Dasuki Gate, so many people on trial accused of all kinds of things. And the same excess crude account, which has been contentious, is still being used by the same government to justify its illegal expenditure. Yes, I'm not surprised about the division in the National Assembly over the matter. Of course, you would expect, this is a democracy. That's the beauty of democracy. You know, we agree to disagree without remaining disagreeable. But it's expected that the president's members of the president's party would, you know, some of them would support him. But the fact of the matter is that even when you look at the arguments of some of them, like Abu Ibrahim, who was trying to say that previous governments had used the same pattern, you know, of anticipatory approval, then he couldn't even justify how proper it is. Because don't forget, if you remember, anticipatory approval was a major issue between President Obasanjo and Anyim, Pius Anyim. If you remember, anticipatory approval, in fact, it became a part of Nigerian political lexicon, anticipatory approval, you know, whereby you could embark on a project without going through the process of appropriation.
But is it not illegal?
It is illegal.
Well, Senator Abu Ibrahim, you know, tried to justify using Section 82. That since the budget, 2018 budget has not been passed, so that the president can draw funds from the consolidated revenue account. All right, fine. That argument could stand on its own. But the question is this. What has been, what kind of interaction has existed between the presidency, between the executive and the legislature, generally on the issue of insecurity? Some months ago, Senator Shehu Sani said in an interview with Liberty FM, in Kaduna, he said the major problem that senators, including APC senators, have with President Buhari is that he does not communicate. There is no, you don't hold conferences, you don't reach out to your party members in the legislature. And I wonder what Senator Itaina, the president's advisor, why is still on that seat? He's grossly incompetent. Because one major function of the president's special advisor on national assembly matters is that he has to smoothen the ground. He must anticipate conflicts. He must meet regularly. He must create behind the scene backdoor meetings between National Assembly and the president.
So invariably, if I have to bottom, so do you really think that there is a bit of a no-love-lost relationship between the presidency and the National Assembly?
The kind of relation, okay, I'll answer your question in two ways. One, in a democracy, in a proper democracy, in a thriving democracy, it would be suicidal, it would not be in the interest of the people for the executive and the legislature to have a chummy relationship all the time. Because what it means is that there's a conspiracy somewhere. They will conspire against the people. Then, but on the other side, yes, in terms of rapport, for the interest of the country, there should be, that's why you have checks and balances. There should be this interaction. But again, what I'm trying to say is this. If the president knew he was going to go through this route, why didn't he
start the process
consult with members of the National Assembly? And interestingly, the leadership of the National Assembly, except for the Deputy Senate President, they comes from his party. So what it means is that even the APC has a weak or ineffectual leadership. There's even no leadership in the APC. If you cannot call members of your party together to reach a consensus on a matter, this is a very serious matter. Insecurity. Yes, I know the president, well, as he has stated, wants the insurgency in the northeast to end as quickly as possible and all of that. But in doing that, the law must not be violated. And I would like to use the opportunity to ask the National Assembly, why have you not scrapped the ECA? Because it makes them complicit in whatever they are accusing the president of. The ECA is not backed by law. It's just a fund.
But even if I have to look at the ECA, so I'm just trying to drag this a little further, there are parties involved. The state government and all of that, not just...
They all own the money. That's
yes,
why
so how come they're not even raising any dust?
Ayo Famshe, governor of Ekiti State, some months back, he raised dust over it. He told...
Over this specific issue right now?
The other one, the 1 billion. He told President Buhari, you cannot withdraw, you cannot tamper with the share of Ekiti State in the ECA. Now this money belongs to the federal, state and local governments. So now you find states cannot pay salaries, local governments are barely functioning, and people are blaming them, saying, okay, saying that governors are stealing money and looting money and all of that. So are you now telling me that the ECA is the president's security vote? Because if you say governors are enjoying security votes, so are you now saying that the ECA is now the president's security vote? You see, we must be honest with ourselves if we want this democracy to survive.
Okay, we'll get back to that. We have to go straight to Ibadan right now.
To
Abuja, rather, right now. Where we're meeting with Frank Tete, a lawyer and an activist. Good morning, Mr. Frank Tete. We are looking at the call for President Buhari's impeachment by the House of Assembly. What's your take on this?
Well, good morning and thank you for having me. I think I like what my colleague over there has stated, that habits are easily formed. We have a government that has, for a long time, in the life of this administration, entrenched a culture of disobedience to court orders, disobedience to statutory provisions, and even disobedience to the outright spirit of the Constitution, especially in the area of observing and enforcing fundamental human rights of citizens. A government that doesn't realize that force it's given to it for the purpose of protecting the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, for protecting the people of Nigeria. So that has been the habit, and that's the reason why I believe the president didn't even consider the constitutional place of the National Assembly in the way it appropriates money. Before I go on, I want to say that this is first and foremost the height of corruption, which is the basis for this the need to initiate the investigation of the president. I do not think that there is any need for the president to be invited to the National Assembly to make any explanation. In law, we consider matters that are strict liability offences. In this case, the impeachment process hasn't even been initiated. What the senator from Edo State, Orohide, was trying to say is that the process be even commenced in the first place. I agree with my learned senior colleague, Mr. Borishade, that the National Assembly is going too late and it's trying to be politically correct. That's the reason why the said motion was even stepped down to be considered by the Committee on Judiciary. There is no provision like that in the Constitution that when a motion of such nature is brought, it should be sent to the Judicial Committee. What's more important is for 1/3 of signatures by members of the National Assembly to be gathered immediately in signing a particular letter to the President of the Senate, saying that a gross misconduct has been committed by the President, and as such, the provisions of Section 143 should become applicable. Now, there is no doubt under Section 80 and both 83 of the Constitution that if, as it is, it has not been reported by the presidency, that the sum of $469 million has been withdrawn from the consolidated revenue account without the approval of the National Assembly, that is clearly an impeachable offense. And if the members of the National Assembly, not only the senators, have respect for themselves as lawmakers and have regard for the Nigerian people and regard for the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, even if it is for cosmetic purposes, they must begin the impeachment process now. This is to send strong signals to this government and to other levels of government in Nigeria that there are consequences when you ride roughshod of the provisions of the law. I do not think that it is out of place in any way. And I also want to extend it to think that the surreptitious manner, I support that argument, and I also accept it, that the surreptitious manner with which the government has gone into the purchase of the Tucano aircraft, it shows that whenever there is a lack of transparency, it is a bid to carry out self-enrichment, corrupt enrichment, abuse of office, and that's why you see the arguments banding all over the media and even the social media. That and I also checked I did my own rough check on the internet in course of this program and found out that particular aircraft is between the sum of $9 million and $14 million. But which would have, but we are being charged almost twice the amount. When a matter of this nature, yes, maybe of security nature, but it's not the kind that would have to be done in a clandestine manner. The property belongs to Nigerians, the Nigerian government, and there is nothing absolutely wrong in declaring to the National Assembly and to the whole world that Nigeria intends to purchase such and such aircraft. That's why we find that Ecuador, Indonesia, and other countries that have purchased that particular aircraft from the U.S., they're all there. The information are all there on the internet. So there's nothing that should be considered under the cloak of the cloak of mystery and to be now made secret and all that. So this is outright corruption, and the president, I want to quickly say that the president does have an option now. in stemming this political tide that will be against him, because this is outright corruption. Corruption of the highest order, one of the worst forms of corruption in the life of this administration. Now, the president can come out openly, quickly, and begin to make spirited apologies to both Nigerians and the National Assembly, and also to attempt to give, justification for making that amount. And then the president should also making that amount, making that expenditure without Senate authorization. Now, the president must quickly begin to find scapegoats at this point. The president should look for scapegoats either in the Ministry of Finance and, like what my colleague over there has said, look for scapegoats like Itainang and other senior government officials and sack them and place the blame on them. When such actions are taken, that will become sufficient atonement for this grave sin against the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I will come back to you, but let's talk to let's just sample opinion in Lagos, and we'll refer to you again shortly. I want you to, analyze all that Barrister Tate has said so far. First of all, he said it's actually sheer corruption, one. And secondly, he also mentioned that the president doesn't really need to appear before the joint session to explain himself, because what he has done outrightly is unlawful. And another school of thought believes that why now, when it's an election year, there should be some other undertones to it. How would you react?
Well, as to it being corruption, that's left for the people to decide. Personally, I believe it is. The standards set, as you said earlier, by the president himself during his electioneering campaign has raised the bar. And we should look at it from that point of view. Now, as to whether he should appear before Senate or not, or the National Assembly, the Constitution does not talk about that. The Constitution says that when 143 has been invoked, and if it does get to the stage where the President of the Senate asks the Chief Justice of Nigeria to set up a 7-man panel, then the President has a right to appear before that panel, or has a right to have legal practitioners appearing for him before the panel. But I think what our last speaker from Abuja said is very apt. In all political jurisdictions, there are times where you know that because it's all about politics at the end of the day. There are times where you know that you may not get the numbers you require for an all-out impeachment, but you still dwell on it. And yes, it is an election year. And since the president rode on that, if I were in the Senate, I'd make sure that the process is started, so that the people of Nigeria can see that he's not such a saint. You understand? So yes, there's politics involved, and it should be involved.
Okay, but then he did make a statement that he's supposed to apologize or begin to explain why. And the report also has it that the president actually told the National Assembly that he had to purchase the aircraft because the U.S. already told him. They had a deadline. He had a deadline to meet.
He had time between when he knew and when he actually made the payment to have informed the National Assembly. That's what the Senate president was saying, between September and February. So that's not an excuse, but we cannot determine that. Okay. It's only if we get to the stage where there's an independent panel. We're just talking generally here.
All right.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, one of our viewers in his reaction, this is from Abubakar Sulaiman from Rauda Academy. He says, what I see in this case is that Mr. President made this decision because he understands that some members of the House of Assembly will not approve his opinion on time on this matter, and the issue is very important to Nigerian citizens. So he's thinking that Mr. President is 100% right, and the word impeachment, according to him, is totally bad.
Yeah, he's a citizen. He has a right to his own opinion. But I would like to ask a question. Nigeria is not at war. We're not basically at war for us to now require emergency appropriation. So why, let me tell you something. There is a publication, Jane's Weekly. It's a defense publication, Defense and Intelligence. Some months ago, I don't remember when, some months ago, it said that a country is suspected to be Nigeria, had placed an order for 6 Tucano jets. as far back as, I think, 2016.
Yeah.
So it's not a fresh request. Talking about any deadline, it's just by being clever by half. You know, if you look at James Weekly, go there, you see the story. It outlined everything that had been done, that the country had, you know, given indication, blah, 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 and all it wanted to do with the jet, because Afghanistan and Colombia had successfully deployed those jets against insurgents. You know, but I want to ask, every day the military high command tells us that they have routed Boko Haram.
I was even going to ask that because just recently they launched another one.
Or they are going to rout Boko Haram.
The last stage
this
right
aircraft,
now.
This aircraft
for 2020.
This aircraft we are buying, you know, it's just like a man who has a small family, a wife and 2 children, you know, buying a small vehicle. Well, it's just from maybe buying a small vehicle. But in his mind, he knows his family might expand to about 5 children. Now, how is he going to pack them inside a vehicle? What am I trying to say? You're buying these Tucano jets just to fight insurgents. You're not looking at the bigger picture. What if we have a major war with a foreign adversary? Can these Tucano jets actually be of any use? Can the Tucano jets be of any use? Why?
Are you saying they're not necessary at all right now or in the future?
I'm saying that those Tucano jets are not necessary. Okay. Let me tell you something. You see, Afghanistan has a different, set of challenges. Colombia has a different set of challenges. And you even see that Colombia has been doing a lot. Even Afghanistan looking for how to resolve their own insurgency problems through peaceful means, through diplomatic means. So going to bring this jet means you're telling Nigerians, this is 2018, that we are still going to continue to bear the burden of Boko Haram
2020
until 2020. What are you saying? So even children unborn, children who have not even been conceived, you're already putting debt on them. I mean, this is criminal. This is improper.
Do you agree?
The likelihood is that they'll be outdated by that time in any event.
Of course,
you understand? But to answer the comment you made, sir,
yes,
Justin.
Yeah.
So, do we say that we believe that President Buhari is such a saint and we permit him to do this over and over again, based on the comments that he knew that he may have known that the Senate may not have approved quickly or as quickly as he had wanted it. And if we do that, then what precedent are we laying for any future government, assuming President Buhari is a saint? You understand? So we have to follow the rule of law. We have to follow the Constitution. And that's what he swore to uphold.
All right. Okay, let's go back to Abuja. Frank Tete, I'm sure you're still following the conversation. But just before we get to you, Frank, to remind our viewers that you can be a part of this discussion, send an SMS. The number is now displayed on the screen, or interact with us via our various social media platforms using the hashtag Galaxy Today. Okay, we're talking about the relevance now of this Tucano jet ahead 2020. Well, the army launching the last operation to finally, decimate the Boko Haram insurgency. How necessary, or what's the necessity, or how important are these jets?
Now, you see, firstly, I want us to understand the mystique around this man, President Muhammadu Buhari. And you must appreciate that if other persons commit such, infractions against our legal system, against our constitution, and against our laws, they get very harsh treatment. But whenever it is the turn of President Muhammadu Buhari, then we begin to talk about, the other possibilities. And can anything be more offensive to our, our system right now than what the president is doing? The president, deliberately decides to make nonsense, to disregard the National Assembly and the Constitution, and then everything is normal. And then we are now discussing whether we should proceed to impeach him or not, or whether he has other options or he does not, even though he does have options. With all, I mean, I like the position that, look, the president, I mean, Mr. Buhari took, that this is a president that has failed woefully in protecting Nigerians from the marauding herdsmen who kill Nigerians every day. And then the man, decides to buy aircrafts that will not deal with herdsmen, but aircrafts that will create, a procurement process that will create the impression that, oh, they want to keep money for 2019 elections. What kind of president that that reaps the benefit of singing the songs of anti-corruption, whereas he presides over a very corrupt regime? And then when he has committed a crime that has become so blatant, that has become so brazen, what we are now discussing is whether we should impeach him or not. This is a golden opportunity to send a very strong message to the rest of the world that even though we operate an inherently corrupt political system, this man who has a very high standard in his fight against corruption must also be shown, must also be subject to the same standards by which he has attacked other persons. Let me address that issue when you talk about anticipatory spending. No! In fact, what Section 81 and 82 contemplate is that you cannot, particularly Section 81, you can only make anticipatory spending when there is no budget, and it is not for the purchase of hardware, military hardware, or such I would call capital expenditure. It is only for the purpose of running a government, paying salaries and running the federal secretariat for not less than 6 months. Not more than 6 months. So what we have just experienced is that even this government has presented itself as a cesspool of corrupt, players. I think that if there is any other time, if there is any time we need to declare a state of emergency in terms of fighting corruption, it is now. The president presiding over corruption. That is why I gave him the option that he should be the one even shouting from high heaven, sacking everybody, placating the National Assembly, and then raising his hands up, saying that, begging that his sins should be forgiven at this time. The president, I believe, is in a hot seat. He's in hot water. And I don't like this idea that we are not treating it with kid gloves. We are not saying because it's President Buhari. If it were Goodluck Jonathan, then they will say, oh, kill him today. Or, if it were Obasanjo, perhaps people will be afraid. But in terms of this president, we are trying to find a way to explain out the and say, give him a way out and all that, because President Buhari, because he has been singing the songs of anti-corruption. Let me tell you, one of the fastest ways, one of the best ways to have deceived Nigerians and the rest of the world, especially those of them in the West, is to play the anti-corruption card very well. And they have done so, but providentially they have been exposed. So, back to your question.
All right, for the sake of time, that is as much as we can take from our end in Abuja. I want to say many thanks to Barrister Frank Tete, an activist who has actually expressed his thought, however passionate as regards the score for the president's impeachment, and many thanks for being a part of the show. A lot of people are still reacting concerning this topic that we are looking at. This one says, although he did not state his name or where he's writing from, good morning. Let me tell you that the National Assembly should not start what they will not leave to finish and cause trouble in the House. What they're supposed to do is to investigate either the money went for the purpose or for the development of the nation or for something else. He went on to say there is the law that backs the president to do something and later inform the National Assembly. I don't know if that is correct. But then let me just look at some other legal issues right now. Barrister Ladipo, he's saying that the National Assembly should not start a process that they cannot finish before they leave this particular assembly. How cumbersome? What's the process involved in evoking that particular section of the Constitution?
Really and truly, it's not such a, it's a cumbersome process, but not such a long process.
Okay.
I think you have a third that have to sign the petition. After that, if they say it should go forward, then the Senate President must, within 7 days, inform the President or Vice President, whichever the case is. And then within 14 days, whether that person responds or not, he has to, I think, put it before the House again, or seek the Chief Justice of Nigeria to set up a panel. Now, that panel, I think, is the one that goes for 3 months. After which, the panel comes back and says, guilty, not guilty.
Okay.
If they say guilty, it goes again to the National Assembly, and I believe it is 7 days, or at the most 14 days, before both houses. And that's where they now require 2/3.
Okay.
And the Constitution says once they adopt the report of that panel, then the person stands impeached.
Okay.
So we're not looking at more than 5 months.
Okay, but
tops, 6
if a
months.
president is impeached, from the eye of the law, can he also be re-elected? Can he go? Can he?
Seek re-election 2019.
Yes, seek election.
You've taken me back to my constitutional law.
Yeah.
The Constitution is not here, but I doubt if you can be re-elected.
Okay.
Not knowing my facts, I doubt. It doesn't make logical sense. I mean, if you have a criminal record, you're not allowed to contest. So why would the Constitution permit someone that has been impeached? You understand?
Really
Well, there again, was Fayose impeached?
Yeah, but I think if the House of Assembly quashes the report.
Yes. No, once they quash the report, it's fine.
I think once they quash,
you understand?
that removes.
All right, more comments. The House will not pass it on time simply because they made demand tips from the president. That's from Alpha Tella in Iwo in Osun State.
But from the look of things, do you not think that, from the House of Assembly, there are some other thoughts, like, are they fighting based on the Constitution, or this is just for selfish interest?
It's safer to say that they are fighting based on the Constitution. You have to prove selfish interest. We can't prove selfish interest. Are we here today because of the viewers, or because we want to? You understand? So it depends on the individual.
Okay, Emeka, one of our guests, one of our viewers is actually asking if the Tucano aircraft to be used in fighting the issue of herdsman militia in Benue State and some other parts of the country. In your opinion, the Tucano jets, is it what we should be discussing right now when we have other pressing security or internal security issues?
You see, like my fellow guest here has said, it's all about building bad habits, sustaining bad habits, and then, like the conductor from Abuja has said, it's corruption. This entire security architecture of Nigeria needs to be rejigged.
Okay.
The army cannot be everywhere. The police, it's totally incapable of securing the country. And if you go back, you remember when MD Yusuf was the IG of police.
Yes.
That was when he mooted the idea of the police mobile force. And then he talked about these jets, these APCs, armored personnel carriers. It cost so much furor, and they said he wanted to organize a coup, blah, blah, blah. Why was he asking for more times for the police and all of that? Now you have all of that. You have the police mobile force, you have the APCs, and then you now have bigger security challenges that those things cannot solve. So right now, the entire security architecture has to be rejigged. You have the NSCDC, the civil defense. What do they do basically? Apart from guarding pipelines, you see them as orderlies in offices, political party secretariats, in government offices. Is that what they were created to do? You need to rejig the entire security architecture, because those Tucano jets are actually meant for specific terrain. They cannot, yes, they can land in unusual places and all of that, but you see, security challenges evolve over time. Nobody knew that we were going to get to the point of having suicide bombers in Nigeria, but we have it. Nobody knows the kind of security challenges that might evolve, because in this country we don't even carry out research. We don't even invent, we don't even think of the future. We don't even plan for the future. So when you are buying Tucano jets, for me, the president should have sat down and held a proper security meeting with the National Assembly to say, okay, look at our position in Africa today, even in the world. What kind of security architecture, military, defense, security architecture should we have right now? Intelligence is totally zero. The intelligence system in Nigeria is a failure. It's totally zero. They are out there pursuing Dino Melaye and pursuing people who are just, wild headsmen are killing people, and then you say that you don't even know where they are from. The president said they are from Libya, some said they are from Mali and all of that. That's a total disgrace. So the entire security architecture needs to be rejigged. We need to we need to take security to the grassroots. The ordinary Nigerian must be empowered to be a part of the security process of the country. If you have to legalize gun ownership, I'm for it. Because it doesn't make sense that some people, some criminals will have weapons and they can just go and kill people, and then you expect the people just to be there to be crying, you know. When Dena Danjuma opened our eyes to that fact, and I think the criminal code empowers you to defend yourself. That you can defend yourself to a certain
self-defense. All right, thank you.
Yes, self-defense.
Thank you, Emeka. You wanted to add something?
Yes, I just want to add, I mean, when you mentioned the Fulani herdsmen and everything, my problem with this administration is that I haven't seen it being proactive when we're talking about security. When you look at the herdsmen, it's fair to say that there's a possibility that the Fulani are nomads. They can come in from Niger, come in from Chad, come in from anywhere. Do we have anything? Have we created anything to track them as they come in? Has he had a joint meeting between the police, the army, the immigration, the customs, people at the borders? The borders are porous. That is when I'll know that this government is serious about security. Instead of buying these Tucano jets, I'm not a security expert, but from my layman's point of view, why don't we have more drones? Why don't we have things that will track them even at night? If your herdsmen are coming into any area, an interim thing is to say, okay, once you get to this area, you have to check in so place. When you check in, you are able to be tracked as you move around the various so-called whatever routes, grazing routes that they call them, and everything. He hasn't come up with short-term or medium-term solutions to this problem. So people are being killed every day, and then you are wondering that Nigerians are turning against you. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay, let's just take one or two comments. You just summarized all your thoughts on all of this. This one says, okay, you did not say your name or where you're calling from. It's just making it anonymous. My name is Adeyeye Williams, location Ibadan. My own view or point of view is that I think Mr. President should be judged according to what the Constitution has said. Okay, this one says, okay, if you see Tate, you can see that Barrister Tate is not happy with the corruption fight. Though my opinion is that the marketing of PMB, okay, I don't even know. He said the marketing of PMB has failed. I wonder what he meant by marketing.
No, that means his marketing as an anti-corruption person.
Okay, on that has actually
failed.
Yes. These jets do not solve any menace in Nigeria. It's the highest form of corruption I've never heard in any country. Okay, we are almost out of time. I can't take any more of your views, but just keep the conversations flowing and also interact with us on social media using the hashtag Galaxy Today. In 30 seconds each, how do we move forward?
The way to move forward, like I said, is the president should respect the Constitution. You must abide by the Constitution. You cannot claim that you are here on a change mantra, that you are ruling the change mantra, and you are doing exactly, you are sustaining the very bad habits for which we severely criticized your predecessors. You must subject yourself to the rule of law, to the Constitution. There are no two ways about it. We are not in a war, so don't push us into expenditures that will not put food on the table of a common man. And then the National Assembly should immediately scrap the ECA, the excess crude account. Okay. It's an illegal account, it's a slush fund, it's a criminal fund. Okay. The people of Nigeria in the states and the local governments are being deprived of
basic need or basic amenities. Why? Because there are some illegal funds here and there.
Being stashed away.
That, you know, where money is being kept in hard currency in dollars. Now, a lot of states are owing workers. Workers have not been paid, and you are talking of buying to Kano Jet. That to me is
okay, thank you so much. Very quickly, Barrister Ladipo.
Well, I'll just, because we're out of time, I'll adopt what he said and just say that the people of Nigeria should keep their eyes open and get government to account for what they do. No one is a saint, and it's becoming clearer.
All right, no one is a saint, and Nigerians should actually be on the alert and put their eyes open. But then my own submission will be that let the rule of law follow, and due process must always be followed. We must say a very big thank you to our guests this morning.
Exactly, we had Ladipo Johnson and Emeka Madunago. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for having us.
And of course, in the course of the program, we had Femi Aburishade, a lawyer from Ibadan in Oyo State, and Frank Tete, a lawyer and activist from Abuja. Thank you so much. And for you sitting out there, we say thank you. We'll do this same time again tomorrow. Remember to get your VC. If you must get the right government, a vote is your power. I'm Uche Onyekoloje. Bye for now.
And I'm Justin Akadonye. Many thanks for being a part of the show. Tomorrow is May Day, Workers' Day, and we'll be looking at the plight of Nigerian workers, all in the wake of the call for amendment of the minimum wage. Are they actually doing the right thing, the federal government? Is Labour pushing hard enough? We'll be looking at all of those issues on the show tomorrow. Thanks for being a part of today. Bye for now.